Mhm.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Timothy Gager, and welcome to virtual Thursdays and occasionally Fridays, Dire Literary Series. We moved to Friday because of Halloween, and that's always a scary event. So our guest tonight is novelist and memoirist and true crime writer, I guess, JoeAnn Hart. And let me tell you or show you a little bit about her. This is from her webpage. If you want to know more, it's JoeAnn with an E at after Joe, not after N, not after Ann, JoeAnnHart.com. She is the author of the novel Arroyo Circle, recently released from Green Writers Press. Other books include the prize-winning environmental fiction collection Highwire, Act and Other Tales of Survival, the crime memoir Stamford 76, a true story of murder, corruption, race, and feminism in the 70s, as well as Float, a dark comedy about plastics, and Addled, a social satire. Her short fiction and essays have been widely published, appearing in Slate, Orion, The Hopper, Prairie Schooner, Terrian, and many others. Her work explores the relationship between humans, their environments, and more in the more than human world. So, hey, welcome.
Hey, Tim, thank you so much for having me. I remember going to the participating in the Dire Literary Series back at in Somerville for my first book. It was like 2007 or 2008, and here you are, still at it. That's wonderful.
It's so
I'm
nice
on
that it's
what's
so
our
nice
fifth
that we're
book?
all at it. So
Yeah,
thanks.
we're all still at it. Yeah, yeah,
So you're gonna read a little bit for us, and then we'll ask some questions.
yeah. I will. I will
Thank
read.
you so much.
I no, I will. I'm going to read just a few couple pages from new book, Arroyo Circle. It's set in Boulder, Colorado. I'm going to read um, a little bit a point of view of Les, who is a homeless NOAA scientist who lives behind Shelley's house. His friend Shelley's house. He lives in the creek behind her house, and he's just this starts. This is just him waiting for her to come back from the supermarket. So this is a little bit into the book, chapter 6. It was the time of great calming. Subatomic particles were speeding to the stars with lighter helium leading the way. Daytime beasts had gone to ground. Tiny canyon bats swirled into the alpenglow, sun red clinging to the smoky mountain tops after the dimming of the tableland. The emergence. A few hours of dark, then horizon glow, then disappearance. Hello and goodbye, over and over into infinity. Les remembers emergence as a systems theory. Decisions will happen naturally. Night creatures emerge at dusk with no conscious input. But what about animals he sees skulking about who shouldn't be up all night? The melancholy coyotes now nocturnal to avoid humans. Bears, too. That's a pretty conscious decision. Someone or something decides. The invisible hand or claw. Where an animal simply acts, a human first decides what it wants. But there's no limit to what we want. So, emergence, a failed systems theory like all the rest. Les sat on the curb and continued to watch the full moon rise, that bright reflector of our light and desires, a mishmash of planetary debris from Earth's collision with Theia, a hypothetical planet. Well, weren't we all hypothetical? Parabolas of night clouds and fire clouds drifted across the stars as smoothly as it rose from his hand-rolled cigarette, tobacco poking out of the end like nose hairs. The keen wind rattled through the dry brush. Wait, no, not wind, but the mumbled hoot of the flammulated owl. You, you, smoked out of the burning canyon and into Shelley's yard. Force from home, force from life, the world painfully out of joint. Smoke stink from the canyon getting stronger with the hour. Not for nothing, but his sense of time passing was now more acute than the cesium atomic clock down the road at the Standards Building. They reconciled cosmic and atomic time, but always fell short. Not so him. Astrophysics 101. There is no absolute time the whole universe obeys. Time is defined by what happens around it and by the distance between points. He'd done his business in town and came back. That was some time ago, and Shelley's still gone. The gal was a bolt of lightning looking for a place to strike, and he guessed she'd found it. Gone, gone, gone. So was the tobacco, which had finished its transformation from dried plant in his hand to volatile gases in his lungs to nicotine receptors in his brain. What he liked about night was that it shut out overrated sight and enhanced other senses. Touch, smell, hearing, and all those many senses that had no name. He shredded the remains with bitten fingers, and while he was not one of those highly attuned creatures who could hear a leaf land on asphalt, he could sense the tobacco shreds fall to the pavement like an echo in the dark cave of his torso, the way he could sense the gravitational rush of a grape as it fell from stem to earth. What a release that must be. Grapes? Where? He patted his pockets. No, not grapes, but a soft curve of a doll-sized bottle and a sigh of contentment. A sip and a sigh. The bottle a black hole where time curled into itself. He went back to looking for grapes and found a warm, soft bag of goodness. He ate a few, sorting out the pits from the flesh in his mouth, then spit the seeds into the grass and pressed them into the soil. Good luck, he said to them. Time for an after-dinner aperitif. Another sip. Then it was gone too, timed out, dead. Where did they all go? He looked up until his neck bones ached, then sprawled out on the dry grass on his back to behold the heavens. More satellites than stars. Nocturnal dung beetles roll their dung by the light of the Milky Way. Used to be a straight path. Now, with all the for-profit crap in the sky, they pile their shit every which way. One of a world of consequences. Scanning the punctured black sky, he found the old familiar pinch of stardust through the smoky haze, the Pleiades, those hot middle-aged stars, the most obvious to the naked eye, as familiar as home. You. Wrong time of year for mating, it seemed to him. A lost mate or a lost mind. There was a slash of feathers in the trees, and he saw a bird land on the gutter of Shelley's roof, a dark-eyed insectivore as big as his hand, a secretive species, flammulated, flamed, flame-shaped markings. You. Little guy shouldn't even be here. A refugee from the mountains of smoke, a refugee from life. Well, weren't they all? The northern boundary for Great Plain birds had shifted 350 miles in the past 40 years. More distance than he'd covered in that time. It was all falling apart faster than he could think about it. The great snake was unwinding, and the daft demagogue in D.C. does nothing. If it wasn't fire, it was flood. Ancient Taoist texts predict a flood that will result in drowned people roaming the land as vengeful ghosts. What can be done, says an early 5th century scripture. The people are to be pitied. And I'm going to stop there.
All right, I'm going to join you.
All right.
What a wonderful reading. So I've got I've got some questions for you, and folks, I'm going to monitor this. Folks can put their own questions in the chat here on the Zoom. So I'm really curious. It seems like there is a lot of similar themes to this novel
Mhm.
as there was to your book of short stories. So I'm wondering, were they written at the same similar times? Did something in the short story book end up making it to the novel because it fit better, or the other way around as well?
Yes, so both, um,
I love
both
it.
both end. So novels take a really long time to write. So I started this in 2017 when my brother died, and actually I created the character Les to sort of keep my brother around for a while longer because he too was a homeless alcoholic for most of his life. And so, so novels take a long time. And so, you sort of need something to keep you going. So let me see, in the collection of short fiction last year, Highwire Act, I think there were two, maybe even three excerpts from this because, I'd be writing and I'd develop a story. Sometimes I jump ahead in the novel, like the COVID story in Highwire Act. I had jumped way ahead during COVID, and so that was like a freestanding story. Had to be changed quite a bit by the time I actually got to that part in the novel. Other pieces, because Highwire Act 2 was environmental fiction. So, and it's very titled Highwire Act and Other Acts of Survival. It was like, stories which were written over a period mostly of 15 to 20 years. Everybody, I take a break from a novel and write a story, and eventually you have enough for a collection. And there it was. And so, I had a couple, the COVID story was in Highwire, and then something else, I forget what, but also, there was this little section where Les is at the graveyard because there's this sort of overwhelming ongoing theme of circles and webs of life, and it's in the title of Arroyo Circle, and Les is just sort of hanging at the cemetery with a spider. And so that little scene just sort of it really felt like it needed to be in Highwire Act. It's not very long, and so it got in there, and then sort of after the fact, right before Highwire Act came out, Terrain.org asked if I had anything not published in Highwire Act, and it was that. So, so it turned out that there were like three, I think three, whatever. Yeah. So it's the themes that I'm always working on. The themes of like what we're doing to the planet, and what we do to other species, and whether or not we'll survive. And so that's a Royal Circle is all characters put under tremendous stress to see if they will survive.
Would you consider Arroyo Circle an apocalyptic novel?
No, not at all. In fact, I definitely, I have written dystopian. I actually have in Highwire Act there is one dystopian, but and I'm due speculative fiction. That's what I'm working on now, but I always put hope into it. And no, I mean, I really think that deep down, I believe that humans are going to be able to turn this around. It might not be in the nick of time. There'd be a great deal of human suffering. I don't think our species will disappear, even as we're disappearing many other species. It'll be a different world. Um, it's sometimes like we stub our toe and we think it's apocalyptic. I mean, to those characters who are going through this in this moment, they are surely thinking that it's apocalyptic. And
Now, with the flash fires up on the North Shore this past week or so.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
you have like an uh-oh moment?
Yeah, because how often does that happen, right? It's like that we are like suddenly we go into code red on the North Shore when it's like the wettest places on the East Coast, and where like the drought's so severe, and all of a sudden we've got two fires going, one in Salem and one in Middleton. I mean, these places aren't close. These are two separate both of them hundreds of acres of fires. In the east, we tend to call them brush fires. In the west, they're called wildfires, but they're the same. And in fact, I would venture to say that in the west, it's often much more brush but than full forest. But yeah, I know. It's just and then because fire and flood are two sides of the same coin, if these fires are happening in hilly areas, then they will be in the spring, they're going to be subject to severe flooding.
Right. On the chat, Paul has asked, your prose is so close to poetry to him, he says. How do the two forms interact for you, if they do?
The two forms
Yes.
of
Poetry and what you just read.
oh, you know, I always say that I write, I've written plays, I write nonfiction, I've done journalism, I've done fiction, I've done and I've written one poem in my life, and that I write everything but poetry. But I am, certainly very, particular about language, but it's hard for me to understand, like, poets being able to condense all these thoughts into such a few words, if I'm a novelist. I use a lot of words. And I try to be careful with them. Yeah.
So tell me about the one poem that you wrote. What spurred that one on? And
Yeah, so we keep rescue livestock. And when you take in rescues, they have an expiration date. They have often been abused. They're often elderly. So they die here, and I make that promise to them when they arrive that they're going to die here on the farm. I am not. They're not going to be moved again, and they're going to die here. So, and we keep that promise. Sometimes they have to go to a hospital briefly for diagnosis, but they are always back here to die. And so this was a particularly painful death. We lost a goat in the middle of winter, and we were unprepared for that we couldn't dig a grave in the winter. And so in farming, you sort of stack them up, the bodies, until take the backhoe out and dig. And it was a bad winter, and so it had been we had to store this body in an outbuilding, and then pull him out to bury him a couple of months later. So it was like hard. So it's called winter burial. And it's about having, and then like we're digging, and it's sort of flooding at the same time because it's early spring, but he has to get in the ground because everything's I mean, it was just, a rather, now we think ahead and we dig graves in the fall if we think anybody's going to die in the winter. And so I wrote that, and I wrote just the one poem ever, and sent it out, and it got actually published in Harper's Palette. I just
oh
sent that
wow.
to the one place, and it got published, and but I never felt I had to write another. I mean,
So now you can just say 100% of my poetry has been published.
100% of it. Yeah.
Let's go back to your novel because that's that's the newest thing for you. And your novel, you deal with flash floods and you deal with wildfires and you deal with late stage capitalism. When you were writing this, was part of your intention to wake others up? Is that part too late, or is it just sort of your views on all of these types of issues?
Yeah, so, I am one who believes that, like, all art is political and, like, all, like, creating a work of art like a novel is, like, that it comes with the creator's slant, and so I have been an environmental climate activist for a lot probably since I was, like, 14, very young, and so this is just part of me, and this is part of me just panicking, and you can sort of just, sort of feel the panic in Arroyo Circle. We are in desperate straits, and there's going to be a lot of human suffering, and the people who are suffering are usually not the ones who have contributed the most to global warming either. There's a, environmental social justice ish part of the whole thing as well. So I don't, you can't be preachy when you're writing like climate fiction, but you just present the facts. You have to get the science right, and you just like write your story, and hope you are moving people with emotions.
Now, strictly as a writer, not as a human being, was it more fun to write in this novel the good or the evil?
Oh, well, evil's always fun. And evil's also so is yeah. I mean, evil, and because, humans, we make such horrible mistakes all the time, and it's just sort of, easy to write about, like, what we do wrong, and it is definitely harder to write, like, somebody who's trying to be like, do the right thing. I like Les is sort of the moral core of the novel, but look at him, he's living by the creek, and he's, an alcoholic, but yet he does have a sense of self and morality that is missing in a lot of people around him, and he is a catalyst also for helping people through their journey of trying to be a better person.
Now, you said that Les was based on your brother, some of his characteristics.
Yeah.
Was it easy for you to jump into his character that may or may not have had the same traits as your brother? Did you want to kind of preserve your brother within Les, or did you not view that as a problem at all?
Yeah, no, I just like, characters take on a life of their own. And so even though I started with him like wanting to be closer to my brother, the homeless alcoholic, well, my brother was not a NOAA scientist, a former NOAA scientist. There that difference was evident right there. And so you just like live with your characters. As I say, they take a very long time and the novels, and so that you get to know your characters. I loved always being in Les's head throughout because he knew so much. He kept sending me back to the books to find out more and more about quantum physics and astrophysics and nature and spiders, and he really, he was pretty smart. He was a pretty smart guy, and, so he was fun to be in, and it wasn't just that I could connect with my brother for a while longer, um, through the writing, less than just became his own person.
So you said that this novel took about 7 years to write. You had another book that took about 20 years. So when
Yeah.
you were researching that book, did you write a novel to kill time or?
Yeah, yeah, because the, true crime memoir, um, was almost always just extensive research. It was like once I realized that what I thought had happened in a murder, my brush with murder when I was very young. A friend got killed with a bow and arrow, and I thought I knew this, that it was a stranger. It was just a random thing. And then one day I was like, well, maybe it wasn't. And so, but it took like a lot of research. The police blocked me. I mean, it was just
Oh.
really difficult to get the information I needed to come to the conclusion, which apparently everybody else knew but me. I had just blocked it all out.
The
And
title of that
and
book,
yes, and I would put it down.
Stamford 76. Yeah.
Yeah, 76. I would just put the novel, I'd put the memoir down and write a novel, and then I'd keep coming back to it. And the research was very much ongoing because, people would call, or I'd like wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh, I should contact this person or that person. That took a really, yeah, that was definitely 20 years in the making.
Well, true crime podcasts are very popular now. Has there been a podcast about that case, and or have you been asked to provide your expertise into a podcast?
And no, and a lot of that has to do with why that was so buried to begin with, is because that was so totally and completely connected to the mob that nobody really wants to, and everybody apparently knew it but me, and everybody knows it, and it's like just sort of one of those things you just don't mention and you just don't um, say anything. I mean, one of the guys was about to be one of the old officers from the original case was about to be interviewed by a reporter I'd set up at the Stamford Advocate, and and the guy died. The guy died before he could get to him. So in the nursing home, it was like a scene from Breaking Bad, the guy dying in the nursing home before the police can get there. So, yeah, it was, I think people just don't want to go near this one.
And
And the
besides, yeah, besides the police kind of blocking information from you, did you get any other pushback?
yeah, no, well, it turned out because the police were the mob at the time.
What a
So
surprise.
yeah, so what a surprise. And all the records had been quote unquote lost. And yeah. So,
Uh,
and of course, then the family would have nothing to do with me. The family of the woman who was murdered were just like ran screaming.
Ellen's got a question in the chat. Can you tell me if Shelley survives?
If Shelley, I'm not going to tell you the end of the novel. She's getting, you know what?
She
Oh,
lives happily ever after, doesn't she?
right. Okay, so the ending is ambiguous. I had not meant for the wet ending to be ambiguous. Um, yes, Ellen, my intention was that she survives. Okay, yes, that was always my intention. I never thought that people would read something else into it. So I let them. I mean, the editors and I had long talks about this during the editorial process, because both the editor and the publisher had two different takes on the ending, which was different from mine. And so we talked about it and agreed we were going to leave it the way I wrote it and let people decide what they wanted. But I never occurred to me people would think something other than that she survived.
So the novels also dealt with COVID. You personally, did you have a tough time when COVID first started out and we were like sterilizing our shoes and
I
things like
know.
that?
Yeah, and it's people forget so soon, which is why I jumped ahead and wrote the COVID scene while I was still in the first half. Knock on wood, I never got COVID. My husband didn't get it. We know we were exposed. We have no idea why we haven't gotten it. But I knew a lot of people who had. We had a lot of people in our family in the medical, world. So we were hearing very close up and personal what was going on in the hospitals. And it was there. I mean, it was the only thing on the news. It was the only thing going on. I mean, it was, yeah, I mean, and how intense it was those first few months. I mean, peop people forget. People, forgot about the 1918 flu, which killed millions of people. They forgot that until the 100th anniversary was coming up and it was back in the news that as soon as these traumatic things happen, we try to put it behind us because
And it's going to be 5 years in March, which
5 years.
amazes me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, JoeAnn, for being here and talking about life and talking about your books, especially the new ones. Everyone should check out Arroyo Circle, a novel of reclamation in a time of loss. It's a wonderful book. There's the cover. Buy it where good books are sold. And, I tend to like the independents rather than the big conglomerates that would
Right.
like to block editorial remarks in their newspapers they're owned.
That's right. And bookshop.org, join that and designate your local bookstore as the recipient of profits from it. Bookshop.org is wonderful. So I can strongly recommend that. And that's what I push. I have nothing to do with the other place.
Thanks again, JoeAnn. Anyone that's watching the live stream off one of the social media sites,
Mhm.
who would like to be involved into the open mic, just use the Zoom link and I'll happily let you in. Uh, Otherwise, you all have a good night. JoeAnn, thanks once again.
Thank you.